call this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. I'll start with a roll call.
Hartman. Jensen. Here. McManus. Here. Phillips.
Here.
Solomon.
Here.
Stazen.
Here.
Zelmer.
Here. We have a quorum? Okay. The next thing on our agenda is approval of meeting minutes from November 21st, 2023. Does anyone have any comments? If not, can I get a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I motion to approve the minutes of November 21st, 2023 as submitted.
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call.
Jensen.
Aye.
McManus.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Solomon.
Aye.
Stazen.
Aye.
Zelmer.
Aye. Great. The next on our agenda is a 5-minute field guide. Michael?
I know all the commissioners are excited. It's the return of the 5-minute field guide after about a 5-month hiatus. So February is a short month, so I'm sharing 5 short architectural terms that begin with the letter F as in February. Whoops. So some days. So the first word is fascia, a word you've heard often, but some people don't really know what it means. It's a flat, wide, horizontal band on a wall surface, or the vertical face of a projecting eave set perpendicular to the soffit. Favus is a marble or stone paving tile, also a type of wood parquet, with a hexagonal shape used to make a honeycomb pattern on a floor or wall. A ferrule is a metal cap or ring on the end of a wood post, or perhaps also on a chair leg, a walking stick, or tool handle to protect and strengthen it. It also can be the connecting flange where a stovepipe meets a masonry flue. A fillet, a narrow flat molding or the flat surface between column flutes, also known as a flat arris, a ridge, a crest, or a striae. And foil, a leaf-shaped opening in carved tracery, one of a series of round openings tangent to the entrados of an arch. It comes in different forms, including trefoil, quatrefoil, cinquefoil, etc., etc., etc. So, my challenge to you this month is to use your 5 new F words in casual conversation in an intelligible way.
I will.
That is the end of my 5-minute field guide. I hope that you're very satisfied, George.
Bravo.
You were scraping the bottom of the barrel on these.
If only you had an F word in there. Okay. The next is the review of planned unit development, PUD subdivision request for 302 North River Lane. Michael, you do an introduction?
I will do an introduction. So, the subject site is in the far northeastern corner of the local Geneva Historic District, and also in the far northeastern corner of the North Geneva Historic District that's listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The proposed development site is Block 18 of the original town of Geneva as platted in May of 1837. Since the early days of settlement, the embankments of the Fox River attracted industry which drew their power from the river's current. The workers who built Geneva, millwrights, blacksmiths, molders, foundrymen, polishers, and other laborers acquired the adjacent lots and established their homes near the industrial factories. Generations of these working-class families lived within a block or two of the Fox River. In 1925, Kate Raftery embarked on her River Street beautification project on the south end of River Street and displaced the Sicilian colony of Italian immigrants who had come to work in the Geneva factories. With her improvements, many of those Italian immigrants moved to North First Street in the block surrounding Block 18. So as identified in the staff report, This site is included in the Downtown Station Area Master Plan as Opportunity Site 2. Opportunity Site 2 actually includes the one block within the historic district and then parts of the blocks, the blocks immediately north of the north boundary of the historic district. It's important to note that when the Downtown Station Area Master Plan was adopted in 2012, it came about after months of public meetings and community input. Among the participants contributing to the plan were McGuire, Gillespie and Associates Incorporated, who served as the preservation consultant, Scott Roy, then chairman of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission, and Carla Kulfas, preservation planner for the city of Geneva at that time. Amendments to the document were made in 2013. The stated purpose of the Downtown Station Area Master Plan includes an identification of challenges, objectives, and implementation goals facing an established community with growth pressures. The Downtown Station Area Master Plan includes a preservation perspective and encourages the reuse of historic properties while encouraging density and a variety of housing types as outlined in the staff report. As depicted in this Downtown Station Area Master Plan, Opportunity Site 2 encompasses portions of 3 blocks. As I said, 2 of those identified blocks exist outside of the boundaries of the Geneva Historic District, which was established in 1987, and they lie outside of the North Geneva Historic District, which was listed in 1982. The National Register District was revised in 2016 by the Illinois State Historic Preservation Office and the National Park Service, and the boundaries were revised to reflect changes within the district since 1982's designation. So the proposal, as you saw in your staff report, it includes townhomes facing North First Street, and then a new apartment block facing the Fox River. So I've included here for everybody's use and discussion this evening, the views that were submitted by benchmark developers. So tonight, the Historic Preservation Commission is being asked to comply with the requirements of the Geneva City Code that require the commission to provide recommendations regarding several items. The first is recommendations regarding historic features, structures, and sites that may be affected by the proposed development, recommendations regarding yard setbacks of the proposed development, recommendations regarding the preservation of landscape features or new landscape features that are proposed, recommendations regarding building scale, particularly mass form, relationships between existing improvements, and materials and other related items. And lastly, the commission is challenged to make a recommendation regarding the most effective means of achieving the city's development objectives of higher density and a variety of housing types within the designated historic district. So this is a current aerial of the site, just to acquaint everybody with Stephen Street up on the upper side of the image. So because the commission is challenged to discuss context and relationships within the historic district and how the proposed development may affect it, I thought I would run through a few images very quickly of the North Geneva Historic District and how it has evolved since 1982. This image shows all of the non-contributing buildings that exist in the entire Geneva Historic District. The upper area of the North Geneva Historic District is outlined in the black line, and that represents the National Park Service's boundaries established in 2016.
Michael, the shaded areas are non-contributing?
The shaded areas in the, yes, the blue-gray color are the non-contributing buildings. And that includes the updates that were made for the National Park Service. Also, this image shows the demolitions that have occurred since 1987. within the Geneva Historic District. And again, the black line represents the 2016 National Register boundary amendment. The darker blue represents those properties that have been demolished, and the lighter blue represents inquiries for demolition that were either withdrawn or denied or otherwise not moving forward or pending. Just for reference, so that the commission understands, as you know, we work with 3 different historic districts. We have 2 National Register districts that are encompassed within the local Geneva Historic District. In 2016, the State Preservation Office engaged McGuire Gillespie and Associates to update the boundaries. And as a result of that, the National Park Service districts, so the North and the Central Geneva Historic Districts, had some contributing properties added to them. They're represented in the magenta. The primary reason for those additions is because, as you may recall, for those who are on the commission, that the period of significance was extended from 1945 to 1966. So most of those magenta properties fall within the 1945 to 1966 period of significance. Another key element is this document that shows the amount of development, of new development and redevelopment that has occurred within the historic district since 1988, to the best of my knowledge. And it also still identifies those properties that were demolished in the light blue. So this final diagram for context, I just want to point out a few things. In the Central Geneva Historic District, so the lower portion outlined in the red boundary, only 8 of the 47 blocks, about 17% of the district, have remained intact since 1987. Since the 1999 survey, about 37 properties were added as a result of the National Park Service review, but approximately 25 properties have been lost to demolition. So approximately 10% of the Central Geneva Historic District has been lost to demolition and attrition since 1979. The North District has only 2 of 20 blocks, or about 8% of the national North Geneva Historic District remaining intact since 1987, when the local district was established. If the proposed development goes forward, if the project goes forward, approximately another 8 properties would be lost, according to the proposal, and that would end up with a net result of approximately 20% of the North Geneva Historic District being lost since the 1982 National Register listing and the 1987 local designation. A couple more diagrams for context. This is a combined survey of the 1999 Architectural Survey and the National Park Service's 2016 survey, showing the significant properties in green, contributing properties in orange, non-contributing properties in slate blue. The area that's hatched shows the area that once was the large concentration of industrial and workers' housing on the west bank of the river that has been lost to demolition since about 1986. During that time, several 1830, 1840, and 1850 buildings were demolished over the protests of local historians and preservationists. And then this overlap shows the approximate boundaries of what was considered the North Italian neighborhood after 1920. So again, it extended all the way to the river in the hatched area. And again, the only industrial building that's left is identified in the little yellow inverted L along the river. It dates to the original historic properties. So it's always great to look at maps, but it's also great to look at photographs of the area. So again, just to give an idea of what the First Street corridor looks like and what its context is, I've got a series of slides that show the variety of materials. You'll see there's brick, wood, stone, and other materials. There's a variety of architectural styles, a variety of fenestration patterns, a variety of roof forms, and also a variety of setbacks and side yard separations between buildings. There is a definite pattern of openness and solid along First Street with a mature tree canopy that makes part of the character of North First Street. And then this view is approaching the proposed development site with the corner of Ford and North First Street there at the right of the image. These are some of the remnant worker cottages on the west side of First Street, just opposite of the proposed development site. Detail images of those. And then the east side of North First Street where the development is proposed. And then because this lies at the north boundary of our historic district, we also have development that's occurred just outside the historic district that impacts the context and character of this block as well. So on the left is a condominium townhome development, and then on the right is a townhome product too that was just built a few years ago. So the one on the east side, the west side of North First Street, and the project on the east side of North First Street. And then there is also, it's not just First Street, but the project is, has a context on all four sides. So there are detached single-family American four-square homes on the north side of Stevens Street. And on Ford Street, there's a mix of historic and contemporary buildings. And then North River Lane, looking from the south to the northeast. Again, we have brick buildings, both contemporary and historic buildings. And from the south, we have, again, what was historically single-family residential properties with a variety of buildings in concrete block and brick with the Fox River on the left. So without going through all the history that was provided to you in the staff report, I'm including this key. This is the way I organized the staff report. I based it on age of buildings. So again, however your discussion is, if this is helpful to reference particular properties. But I did try to summarize the properties and what the historic preservation report that was submitted by the applicant said. Again, this is the brief version of it. I'm sure they'll elaborate. But this is the William and Sarah Berman house, built 1855. It predates the 1869 bird's eye map of Geneva. It dates to the original 2 decades of the settlement of Geneva, and William Berman was an early carpenter who had a long career here in Geneva. The preservation report identified this property as being raised because relocation rehabilitation was infeasible. The Frederick and Catherine Skipworth house, also built 1855 by Frederick's stepfather, William Berman, the carpenter I just mentioned. Again, the house has been heavily altered. You can see in the 1869 image there was a 2-story wing where the current garage stands now, and the house has been heavily remodeled in the interim. The proposed remediation is to raise the structure because relocation rehabilitation is infeasible. The George and Aurelia Skipworth house, also built by his stepfather William Berman in 1856. This house has a very unique history in that, as you can see in the 1869 view, it originally faced Ford Street. And in the 1920s, another contractor who was pretty prolific here in Geneva, Martin Seastrom, purchased the property and turned the house 90 degrees and made several modifications. So this house represents 19th century architecture and 20th century alterations. Again, the proposed remediation is to raise the structure. The Lencioni Steve's house, it should be Steve's Lencioni house, I apologize, was built as an Italianate house in 1872, and it has been remodeled with almost all the Italianate features removed from it. It does have, while most of the buildings have both architectural and historical significance, this building has lost most of its architectural integrity on the exterior as far as an Italianate house, but it has a strong relationship with the Lencioni family, who established the Blue Goose Markets that were in business for almost 97 years in St. Charles. The proposed remediation on this property is to raise it as well. The Chicago and Northwestern Geneva Grape Sugar Industrial Spur Line was actually done in 1880, I'm sorry, wrong date there. Was established as one of two industrial spurs that fed between St. Charles and the Chicago Northwestern line in Geneva. This is the only surviving segment of either of the two industrial spur lines. These spur lines are a remnant of the industrial development that had stood along the west bank of the Fox River. This rail allowed for supplies to be brought in and finished wares to be shipped out from Geneva, and helped build the industrial base that made Geneva and give them a strong economy in the late 19th and through the early 20th century. The proposed remediation is to relocate a 10-foot section of this and provide an informational plaque about the grape sugar industrial spur line. 2 Stevens Street is the Fred Hillquist Construction Company warehouse, built in 1925. Fred Hillquist is known as having dug most of the holes in Geneva in over a 50-year period. He was a quite prolific excavator and concrete contractor. However, he only occupied this building for about 14 years. He lost it in the Great Depression, and then it was converted to another construction company, and then later converted to warehouse storage for the Geneva Bottling Works. The proposed remediation is to raise the structure. 8 Stevens Street is the Geneva Bottling Works warehouse and office that was built in 1941. It's a vernacular industrial building built of concrete block, and as you can see from looking at the windows and other alteration of the doors, it's been heavily altered since 1941. It served utilitarian purposes originally as offices, but then was also used for some bottling and some storage, but then has been converted to apartments that I don't know if they're occupied anymore, but they did serve as apartments for several decades. The proposed remediation is to raise the structure. And then finally, 302 North River Lane was the Geneva Bottling Works warehouse and office, built in 1948. It's a brick building that is 2 stories in height, basically built of cast-in-place concrete with a brick veneer. There are administrative offices at the 2nd floor at the north end of the building, but the rest is designed to be a warehouse and shipping facility. Curiously, the southwest corner of the building is clipped to accommodate the industrial spur line that also served the property and helped with shipments from this building as well. So again, the Historic Preservation Commission is charged with making recommendations for these items. And I would like just to reiterate that this is a public meeting for the purpose of gathering the recommendations of this commission. The Commission's written recommendations, along with the minutes of this proceeding, as well as any public comments that may be made under the public comments section of the meeting, will be forwarded to the Planning and Zoning Commission, which will hold a public hearing for this project. The recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission will be forwarded to the City Council for review. The subdivision and plan unit development process recognizes that conflicts and gray areas may exist between the downtown station area master plan, which includes a stated goal of increased residential density in the downtown area, the adopted preservation plan, the adopted design guidelines for historic properties, and even certified local government guidelines and SOI standards. Therefore, it is this commission's duty to provide guidance and commentary that seeks to provide a balance between all City of Geneva objectives as it relates to the preservation of architecturally and historically significant properties, the overall character of the Geneva Historic District, and the preservation of sites which tell the fuller story of Geneva, Illinois. So with that, I would turn the lectern over to Anthony from Benchmark Developers and introduce anybody from your team, and the floor is yours. I can go back and forth any images that you would like to include or the ones you have available.
Okay, thank you. So thank you guys for hearing us today. My name is Anthony Pecoraro with Benchmark Developers. I have with me most of our team, Eleni and Ken on our architectural team, my dad, Ben Pecoraro, Eva, and Francesca as well for my team. So just wanted to start by saying, we are an experienced developer. We've been practicing this for quite a while. It's a family business as well. And this is what we do, is multifamily development and mixed use as well. I just wanted to start by saying we evaluated this property to propose something that is within the guidelines of the comprehensive plan that the City of Geneva did put together in 2012. We did our best to limit the amount of variations that we are requesting as part of our proposal. We have gone through many iterations of the building design as well. At some points, we had actually proposed to reuse all, if not most, of the brick from the 302 River North bottling works facility, and we are still open to that as well. We feel that this is, yes, a contemporary, but also more industrial contemporary that is a little bit more on the modern side. So we are open to suggestions if there is a lot of pushback to the design. We have not had much pushback up until this point on the design. There has not been many design guidelines within the City of Geneva's comprehensive plan guidelines, but we are proposing a predominantly conformist structure on the site. With that, I think we had a very good and detailed introduction as to what we are proposing. I'm more than happy to open up to questions unless any of you guys want to speak a little bit more on it. But
Just a real quick question, is the image that we're looking at right now, would be the equivalent of being on the river right now? Like, is that the river view?
correct. So this is, imagine a camera being on the east, looking at the building. So the views that you would see from here are of the river. We are trying to accentuate the views of the river as part of our development. These are apartments and rentals, and views are a premium for all these rentals as well.
I was just thinking more of the parking lot on the river.
So the parking that we added on the east side of River Lane is public parking. It's completely in excess of our parking requirements. We are doing this, we felt it was a need by the city to continue further north the parking that does run along River Lane. It seems like the improvements of the riverfront stopped just south of, Ford Street. So we did want to continue that a little bit further north in front of our building. On the west side, where our property line begins, is some private parking for our building for guests, for tenants as well, which is where our setback starts as well too. So, yep.
Any other questions for Mr. Pecoraro?
I do have excuse me. You mentioned the comprehensive plan. Are you referring to the downtown station area master plan?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I just want a
Thank you for
clarification
clarifying,
on that.
yes.
Could you give us like an overview of how you evaluated each one of the historical properties in terms of, you did provide some costs in your preservation report, and what the process was for evaluating like the bottling plan itself and the homes?
So, again, we did start with the intention of making this a multifamily development property. So at first, we began to evaluate whether or not it was an option to refurbish the existing structures to accommodate the density that we would require. In this case, we're actually proposing 114 units in this structure, and then 14 townhomes along the west side. It just was not feasible to reuse the existing structure and design around it. The infrastructure is not there to support another 4 stories above. The infrastructure is not there to accommodate the sewer improvements that would be needed to be made, the water as well. So it just was not able to accommodate what we were proposing. The single-family homes, same thing as well. We did evaluate each one of those. We do have architects and engineers on staff that work with us as well to figure out if it was feasible to remodel and refurbish and keep the homes. It just was not part of our plan, or it's not feasible for us.
It's not feasible technically, or it's not feasibly financially, or what was? the
Financially,
debate?
financially, yes.
Hey, as long as we're on this subject, Michael, could you go back to the report where the numbers were on the evaluation of those existing homes?
Their report.
'Cause, yeah, there was something I didn't really understand there. I'm pretty much a numbers guy.
Turn on your mic. Turn on your mic.
Oh. I'm pretty much a numbers guy, but I couldn't figure out, and there's a couple line items in there that apparently aren't additive to the whole.
Sure.
And if we could see those columns,
I think it's in the report and not in,
If you're looking for the actual numbers from the preservation report that was.
yeah.
I think I know where you're getting at. So some of that, we were trying to evaluate whether or not, for one, if it was possible to refurbish and resell the properties as refurbished properties. And we were also evaluating whether or not we could physically lift, move, and relocate these homes onto another property in the Geneva Downtown Historic District. I think one of the numbers that you're probably referring to is the land cost.
Well, yeah, there were 2 site numbers in there. One is what you paid for it, and then another one for another site, and then, and so.
Right, well, I think, that's probably a little bit oversight. We were trying to oversimplify it a little bit in the report. I think I know exactly what you're
Okay.
talking about.
I'm seeing construction estimate, well, that's great, a square foot model. But then prorated purchase of land, which was, I guess, your cost for the parcel, but then cost of a new parcel, and then relocating the home. And when I added all those up, it didn't come close to your bottom line here. So I knew there had to be more to this.
Yeah, so I think we did not want to double count the land. So if we were relocating the property, we would count the land cost as the new property's land cost. If
Where
we
would
were-
you put it, though? Well, that never came up.
Well, there's not many properties
Right.
available. There is 1 or 2 that we did see. I didn't think it was appropriate to use the,
That's almost a non-starter,
Well,
relocation.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then basically your remodeling cost, foundation cost, and then adding your land cost into that is what below the line represents your total cost versus what the value of the property
Correct,
would be?
correct.
Okay.
So what was that, again, that total cost represents what specifically?
So I think what we were trying to evaluate is what the buildings would cost to refurbish
Correct?
and what your total cost of investment would be. for
So
each home.
purchase of the property and remodeling the house, basically,
Correct. Purchase of the property.
is basically
remodeling.
that total cost.
Correct, and then we wanted to compare that to make sure that it was feasible versus the value of the home. So if we sold the home, would we be losing money on each home? And unfortunately, we would be.
So even those numbers don't add up here. Like, for example, at 301, you have a construction and purchase price of the land that totals 510, but then the total cost you provide is 620.
Okay, so let me pull it up.
there were foundation costs in there too, but,
I assume
It was
those
included.
foundations were moving the building to a new spot.
I don't have this one in front of me.
okay, I didn't, so, that's.
But even
well,
then, if you add those, it
right.
still doesn't
Well,
total out,
That's
yeah.
what
Yeah.
I tried it a couple different ways and it didn't. And all the parcels are different sizes. Would, in this evaluation, did the land cost consider that these parcels are not, one's a heck of a lot bigger than like 3, I think is a lot bigger. You had a plat map on one of those, Michael, so they're all over the place in terms of lot size. And so I didn't know how that was factored into this evaluation, but, I don't know, looking at my tax bills, I think the value of this property might be slightly undervalued in terms of restored.
Yeah, so, I mean, the values that we were coming up with were based on comparable properties in the area that have sold recently within the last year or two. So,
So you guys did that comparison?
Correct.
In-house, basically?
yes, yes.
Hey, Michael, can you switch us to a view that's an aerial over the proposed? I just want to see how this lays out over existing roads.
Oh, I see what you're saying on that cost.
So there was in the presentation too, while we're looking, there was also this quote on all the slides of the homes being raised, that it offers greater benefit to the city of Geneva. Whose quote is that? Who says that?
That is our opinion.
Oh, I see, okay.
Oh,
Okay.
Hey, Paul,
Yes, sir.
can I discuss the zoning
Okay,
variances?
Thank you. So is that, like, that's Stevens right there at the top end of this, and Ford kind of at the bottom? So this whole thing lands in between Stevens and Ford and east of
River
31?
and then,
Okay.
River and then First, or 31, if you will.
So is it that it's residences just to the south of, south of this?
That's, south of it, I believe, are
And
condos.
Is it that retirement condo?
Shodine
Yeah.
condos,
Okay.
I believe.
South of the main building are the River Lane condos. South of the proposed townhomes are single-family homes.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, gotcha. Okay. You know, the whole thing, this is me just talking right now. Initially, my first reaction was like, wow, not only is it taking out some contributing properties, it's also just looking pretty massive. Massive on the riverfront, a parking lot on the riverfront. I don't know, this whole thing just doesn't sit well with me. I don't, just, the whole thing doesn't look like, and I understand the city has an objective to, put more units and a higher concentration of homes, so it's not all just these really giant homes being built in downtown Geneva, but I don't know, I don't have a good feeling about this as I'm looking at it today.
Yeah, I think to your point on the density issue that the city was looking for, yes, the comprehensive, or the comprehensive master plan basically shows that there's, townhomes potentially on First Street there. But it also, at some point, there's additional townhomes that were created outside of the Opportunity Zone northwest of this block that basically kind of already satisfies the density requirement that the city had, or their concept of density.
There's another multi-unit going in further west in north downtown too, I mean, right? That, those townhomes, where is that? Like Peyton and Richards and.
Oh, yes, I know what you mean. On Richards, that it was a vacant land.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, and I feel like this development looks like it started from a blank slate, and that's not what we're looking for, is a blank slate to start with, I guess.
the historic district.
It's the historic district, so there's something there already.
Yeah.
And, you know, it really is difficult for us to look at this and have, I mean, you were bringing up issues of zoning. I think part of well, I'll ask your questions. I mean, I think that's part of the PUD, is that you get relief from some of the zoning issues. So, but specifically,
Well, I guess, regarding, the zoning variances you're requesting, part of our job, being with historic preservation too, is working with homeowners and businesses. That also involves setbacks and lot usage and things of that nature, and, building heights. And we've been very to the rule on that, to the detriment of some of the people probably sitting in here, regarding lot usage and things like that. And, the variances you're requesting are not just slight, they're very dramatic. And, that's a problem, I think, that comes into the density. Because there have been many homes that have wanted to had higher building heights, and we said no. Okay, not only are you going to the max, you're requesting to go 3 feet over that and basically saying it's no big deal with the other housing areas in the neighborhood. Your opinion, okay? The lot coverage, this is a big concern, because we've had a lot of residents that have wanted to put in more expansive desks and porch, and stuff around their property. But 70% is the coverage. You're going to 83, okay, which is also, I think, creating the massiveness of this building. I also notice how you have the townhouses in front of the main apartment building that kind of block off the massiveness of it, and also with slightly different architectures to make it a little bit more appealing. I'm not totally thrilled with the architecture for it. And then the other aspect that we have come back quite a bit is setbacks. With people with fences, with people with garages to the street, whatever. And you're looking to reduce several setbacks to 0.
So if I could respond just to those setbacks at least while it's
Go for
in
it.
my mind. So on the east side, we are proposing a 0-foot setback, but I think it's important to note that that 0-foot setback is counting just to our parking that we are adding. The building setback, I want to say, is roughly,
It's 24 feet.
is actually 24 feet back from the property line, which is actually exceeding the setback. North and south, we are not asking for concession on the setbacks. And in the rear of the building, yes, we are asking for a concession on the setback, but we are also part of a master PUD, and it's not really affecting, in our opinion, the properties west of us.
Why don't you talk about the lot coverage?
The lot coverage, yes, we agree. We are exceeding the zoning requirements there, but we feel that we needed it in order to accommodate the parking requirements that would be needed to, the parking requirements that the city of Geneva requires. We are adding many permeable pavers, which are not getting discounted on the lot coverage as well.
So you're reducing the open space by 43%.
We are.
Okay, and, and at the same time with the building height, okay, you specifically note in there that you can't have a building below 5 stories to make it profitable. And so therefore, you're spreading it out, which is why you're doing these lot coverage. And frankly, your economic feasibility is not our issue here. I understand, I know exactly what you're doing here, okay? You're spreading the building out because you can't go higher, all right? And you're going for these setbacks for additional parking because you can't create any more than you already have inside to meet the Geneva requirements. That's not why we're here, okay? This is a very massive project. I would be curious as to how the architecture that you have proposed here, how does it conform with the surrounding architecture? Because I don't see it.
Well, we were not, I'm sorry, we were told that contemporary architecture would look well upon on this property early on in the stage of this, so we did follow that. It is not simply a siding building, there is a lot of brick in this building, which is, we feel it is a nice architectural feature. Yes, we are not deceiving anyone by trying to say that the building is stretched out in order to accommodate the building height. We are trying to maximize the ability of using this property, getting as many parking spaces as we can while not exceeding the building height requirements. We are, yes, 3 foot over the building height requirement, but that is mostly parapets on the building as well.
The height is the height, and we've had residents
Well,
have.
usually heights, though, you measure from the ground up, not, what's really confusing to me, and David or Michael, on that opportunity plan that you published in this thing, it had an odd diagram where it took the roof height of a residence about 2 blocks west of there, drew a horizontal line, and then allowed, I've never heard of a height limitation that went horizontally from a roof line in the historic district just because of the fall of the river basin. I've never,
So we're actually not following that exact building height diagram. Our building height on the west side is, I want to say roughly 45 feet. I don't know the exact height. And on the east side, it is taller than that.
you
So-
can get 5 stories and 45 feet?
Well, on the west side of the property, the building is only 4 stories because of the slope of the grade, or because of the grading on site. I believe that we're permitted to average the building height based on the west and east side of the property. Correct me if I'm wrong, David? Yeah. So the 53-foot building height is an average of the height from the west side and the east side. And that's how that is calculated.
So we, Michael or David, we don't have a height limitation in this from River Lane. Usually we measure from grade up, not the other way around. So I'm a little, that diagram just kind of shocks me a little bit.
Well, that cross-section is intended to show the character compatibility with the adjacent properties on North First Street, that the maximum height from River Lane, we don't want to tower over properties fronting on First Street on either side, east or west of First Street. So that's not illustrative of the maximum height allowed in the zoning district. That maximum height is 50 feet, and that is measured from the average grade around the property.
Okay. Because I remember when we were discussing that Shodine property, there was an issue on number of stories and height there. And so this surprises me a little bit. It is massive, though, you know, and that height is, I mean, it just dominates the entire district. And part of it, obviously, is not only the massing on the ground coverage, but the overall height. The townhouses, scale-wise, seem more reasonable than the apartment building. But the other thing that's odd, I know that you addressed that public parking was going to be added to the east side of River Lane, but when I first saw these, your renderings and site plan, it almost looked like you were looking to have River Lane vacated.
Right.
No, that's
Which-
not at all, that's not at all what we're planning. So
Okay.
that parking on the east side
Yeah.
is public parking. That would be a continuation of what's similar, just south of Stevens Street.
Okay.
So maybe the rendering's not depicting that. really
Yeah,
well,
well,
but, yeah.
when you explained it,
Yeah.
but visually, when I
Sure.
first saw it, it looked like part of the parking lot.
Sure, no, that's not what we presented.
So you have parking underneath the entire apartment complex, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
And is that adequate to meet the city's requirements, or is that extra, or is that
Just indoor?
the indoor, yeah?
Just indoor would not quite get there. There is a parking lot between the townhomes and the apartment building that's on grade parking that does help us meet the parking requirements.
So you're only a few parking spots short.
I don't think we're any short.
Underneath the building.
Correct, yeah. Slightly more than a few. I want to say it's 20 to 30, yeah.
So while we're on this one, you talked about slope of the site. Looking at the west elevation of that, I see continually 4 stories all the way across from south to north. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there are 4 levels of apartments?
So it's
Or-
four levels of living on top of 1 level of garage. The first floor does have some lobby as well on the southeast corner, which you can kind of see.
Okay, that's not part of the parking, okay.
Correct.
Right, so they're on the south
Right.
face, those 30 blocks are basically
Right.
parking on the base, on the
But-
ground, and then
Right, but
amenities and
the
office.
elevation, the slope of the site then, from south to north, rises or falls?
From south to
north.
north raises.
It goes up?
It is relatively flat, yes.
Slightly, maybe.
Slightly, yes.
Okay.
But there's a big difference from east to
Right,
west.
Correct.
right, you could see that in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's Geneva because of the river.
Yeah. I guess I'd like to go back real briefly, and I know the zoning issues are definitely important and should be considered. Going back to the numbers that we were looking at in terms of, for the townhomes, for instance, I think one of our recommendations would be to provide some documentation on those numbers, revisit those numbers, look at them, and, give us a little more detail on the process that you used, who was involved. I mean, was there a professional architect that had some experience with renovation that you had that looked into these buildings? The numbers don't add up at this point, so.
Sure. I think what I didn't also get an opportunity to touch on is we've been through each one of these buildings and homes. I do have 300 pictures that I don't know how to show you guys on here right now.
It's okay, we don't need to see
I don't think
300.
you need to see every pictures of them, of each home.
Examples would be good, though, for the future.
Yeah.
You would
Yeah.
have- Well, and so, just kind of thinking about these existing homes, so what is are the homeowners here, are they in agreement that this is going to take place and that they're planning on having their
Do you have,
property?
I guess, you own the property right now, or do
We-
you just
we
have a
are-
contract to,
We are contracted purchasers.
okay.
The homes as they're used today are not as they were
So
designed or
you,
intended.
so you own them?
No, we are purchasing the property from the current seller,
All of them?
yes. Right now, they are all rentals. They're no longer really single-family homes. They are subdivided into 3 or 4 families each. I wish I could kind of show you guys some of these pictures, but they're really, I hate to say it, is really no architectural significance to these homes any longer. I understand the historical significance of each one. But
That's
Yeah,
one of the criteria which makes things
Yeah, that-
significant to us.
Yeah, and we've seen some amazing things happen with very small houses in the district that have gone from what looked like a shed to an $800,000 home. And that's where I think some of your numbers don't seem to add up correctly, because the values in Geneva are maybe not along 31, but
Anywhere
the
downtown.
values in downtown are quite high.
Yeah.
And it's really disturbing that nothing was thought about of salvaging anything in the way of the workers' cottages along that road along First Street. And then also, it is, like I said, it feels like it's just the idea of any historic buildings or structures were there, or just, it was not really a thought. It just,
Which is unfortunate because it's lying directly inside the historic district, so.
We understand that, and we came to this property with the understanding that the village did have a initiative to redevelop this property.
Sure.
And we did follow those guidelines to, with obviously modifications. Not everyone was followed to the T, but we did our best. Again, we also are not speaking much of the fact that we are trying to preserve some of the historical artifacts in the Bottle Works facility. We're trying to make those ones that we can make public as we can. Many of them would be placed on display in our lobby, which is somewhat public. There's a lot of glass in storefront, but we are trying to honor the history of the site. Granted, it is a new development, it is a new building, but we are trying to honor it.
Yeah, it is kind of like I could understand that the master plan shows something, but the master plan also says that we should try to salvage, reuse, and adaptively reuse the buildings that are there. And I know that you've stated that that's just not economically feasible for a project of this scale. Is that is that the answer you have to that?
Yes.
One of the goals of the master plan is that the downtown should accommodate a diversity of housing types. We get that, okay? There have been new houses going up throughout the historic district that are not of a historical character, but, but they're much smaller in scale and mass to kind of add the variety to our downtown area, which, as Chairman Zomer says, is, property values are quite strong. There's a lot of desirability to get in there. And within that goal, it's encouraged that new residential infill developments that are consistent with and compatible with adjacent densities, setbacks, intensities of the development, and generally fit into the overall scale and character of the downtown area. So, as I was saying before, with these variances, your neighbors are, being accommodated to have 70% coverage, setbacks and other things like that. Why shouldn't you conform to the same thing as your neighbors would be conforming to?
Again, we are open to suggestions and making some modifications. This was our plan where we could make the parking, building height as close to zoning requirements as we could, while being financially feasible again on the property.
Once again, the financial feasibility of this project for you is none of our concern here. That's a business decision that you and your family and your partners are making. Our job, our task here is to make sure that whatever these projects are conform to what we're set about here in the master plan. Whether or not you can do this profitably is not an issue when it comes to evaluating this project. That's a business decision that you and your partners make. And to be honest with you, and this is my opinion, the accommodations that you're requesting for the zoning variances are outrageous and unwarranted. And once again, we held everybody with private homes and businesses to these same standards, and I don't understand why you think you're special to get these kinds of accommodations. That's all I have to say.
Paul, can I just make a comment?
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we understand, obviously zoning, massing, heights. We comply with a lot of what is already required. 3 feet, if you can show the elevations of it, are up to the top of the parapet. So there's levels within the building that are actually below that.
Excuse me, can you state your name for the record?
Yes, sorry, Eleni Pecoraro. And when it comes to density, although the building itself is at 83% and the required is 70, which we understand, this is a master development of both the townhomes and the building, and we're actually 7% less. So the townhomes are 7% less of what is actually required. So if you look at it
But the
overall,
entire site is at 83%.
just the building, not the
Apartment.
entire site.
Okay, well, that's a different issue there. And as far as the height of the roof is concerned, we've had many discussions with homeowners, some of us sitting in this room. It doesn't matter okay, if it's 50 or 53 or 40 or 36, there have been many cases that I've been on where roof heights have been lowered to accommodate our rules.
Which we understand, and
No,
we
you don't,
are,
because you want a variance of 3 feet.
correct. But that's only to the top of the parapet, right, on certain levels.
The
And
roof is the roof.
I understand that there's the height,
Correct.
and that's 3 feet. But if you look at the view from the townhomes, it actually goes level to the roof of the townhomes, the top of the building.
It doesn't matter. We need to be accountable for the same variances and the same guidelines that we have with other people here in the city of Geneva.
Which we understand completely.
So why should we give you an accommodation that we won't give to a homeowner?
We're just asking for that variance, for that 3-foot variance. We, massing, when it comes to scale, we're close to the apartment building that's next to us. We comply with the townhomes that are next to us, which we believe the massing of it fit within property context as it sits of right now.
That, actually, the context, I think, is more important than the physical height of it. And it's whether, I know that I look at the townhomes themselves, and I see that, we're not replacing, but we're taking historic homes that were 1.5 stories, and the townhomes themselves are 2 full stories with a roof on top. And, we really were to work with the rest of the neighborhood that's directly across and down the street to the north. I think we would want the townhomes to be more of not a full 2 stories, but 2 1.5 type stories, where the scale of them come down so that it can work with the area.
Well, if I can add to that, if you are comparing us to the townhomes just north of us, just north of.
I'm not
Stevens Street.
comparing you to the townhomes to the north. I'm comparing it to the context of the whole neighborhood, specifically in the context of the historic district, which the neighborhood to the north is not.
Correct, but it
So-
also was part of the Downtown Master Comprehensive Plan, and it was part of your presentation as well, those townhomes.
Just for visual reference, just so we
For
knew where we
visual
were.
reference.
Because it is part of the neighborhood. Also,
Correct.
the condominium building just south of us is a similar height, granted, not quite as tall as ours, but it is a very similar height as well.
And see, we've had other projects that have come through that we've specifically told them to bring the roof heights down and to bring the second floor into the roof to lessen the scale of that. The scale along Route 31 is one of my concerns. It doesn't seem to work with the context of the historic district.
So we were just providing recommendations today, Michael, not voting on anything. This isn't us, what are we doing today?
What you're doing today is providing clear recommendations of the proposed development that can be passed on to the Planning and Zoning Commission to be integrated into the recommendations made to the City Council. So, again, I put back up on the slide here,
Yeah.
some of the things that are identified in the downtown stationary master plan, I'm sorry, in the city code for the review of a planned unit development. And so I think to be courtesy to the applicant and to the Plan and Zoning Commission, that very succinct and direct recommendations specific to these items that are identified in the city code are what we're seeking tonight.
Okay.
Okay.
And then is the public saying anything? Are we,
They can say something after the review is completed, after the secretary's report they can stick around and have public comment
Gotcha.
at that time
okay.
about this specific.
I have one other question.
Yes,
I just want to note that there's also a public hearing that will be held before the Planning and Zoning Commission, where the public will have an opportunity to speak and cross-examine during that public hearing. So the public hearing will be held at the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And not tonight?
And not tonight.
Okay.
I know that it's early in your development here, but I'm thinking 114 units. Where are your mechanicals going? Are they going to be rooftop and cooling towers?
Yes, there's a combination of interior, condensing units are on the roof, makeup air is on the roof.
Well, they'll exceed 3-foot parapet height for sure.
Uh,
So in addition, do we need a variance on rooftop as well, Michael? Or is it just architectural elements?
The height is measured to the ridge line of the roof for the parapet. So,
Okay, so mechanicals are excluded.
correct.
Okay. So I don't know of any rooftop units that are 3 feet or less, plus
Well,
your cooling towers. so-
I'm also averaging at 3 feet. There are portions of our parapet that are 5 feet, some are 1 foot. I'm
Okay.
kind of averaging at 3 foot. We
So-
could position the makeup air where it is at the higher parapet to brush that as much as
Okay.
possible.
I mean, could you reduce the height of that parapet and make the 50-foot height requirement? Because it looks like the highest portions are primarily decorative or in nature.
It is. We also do not want to propose a flat line building with no architectural substance as well.
Yeah.
I don't think that's appealing to anybody, especially with mechanical equipment and risers that go up through the roof and condensing units. I don't think that's really a benefit to anybody. We've actually gone through this this design on, this is maybe our 8th or 9th iteration, while you guys are seeing the first one that you've seen here today. We've gone back and forth with staff on a few different iterations of this building. It started at 6 stories, we've gone down to 5 stories, the building height has gone down even lower on multiple occasions. I think we've gotten to a point where it's about as low as we could get with 5 stories and 1-story parking without chopping off a full story altogether. But yeah.
Just curious, what are you gonna do with the power distribution that's on the, I wouldn't wanna look out my window at that.
So there is a main line that does cross the river.
Yeah.
That's a little unachievable to bury, obviously. All the power lines that are going north-south along the river, we are burying as part of our PUD as well. So that's gonna be a nice, to really help our views as well.
Yeah, well, it'll help everybody's.
Yes,
That
yes.
thing is hideous. Thank you.
I'd like to ask a couple questions about the bottling plant itself and what your evaluation of that was and the process for that, and why, or how you came to the determination that there's no adaptive reuse possible for that building.
Well, there's no adaptive reuse possible for the building for what we're proposing. That structure is not possible to accommodate 114 units.
No.
When you say 100, I mean, obviously not, but
Correct.
it's, the bottom floor, basically, even in your design, is gonna be parking. I mean, is the bottom floor of that existing building suitable or could be made suitable for parking?
Well, it could be, but it's significantly smaller. It wouldn't necessarily.
Certainly, it would require additional parking like you've got, planned for already, but could you use that bottom floor, adaptively reuse that bottom floor for parking in addition to the other parking that you're planning on?
Well, column locations, ceiling heights are all part of that as well. That building on 2 stories, I want to say is, I don't want to speculate, but it is over 20, 25 feet. So that first floor might be taller than our first floor, making our building height even taller. And the financial accommodations that would need to go into rehabilitating that building and accommodating our building, which just is not feasible for us.
Yeah, I mean, and that's some of the thing where, we typically would, if someone comes in and says they want to demolish a building like that, we typically would want to see some additional detail on how you evaluated it, the numbers that you used, and the rationale that you came to for making the determination that it needs to be demolished. I mean, as a historical building, which I think you guys agree, we agree, it's one of the criteria that we have to look at for demolition is, have you exhausted all the alternatives for,
Yeah.
And exhausting is, a kind of a nebulous term, but you basically have come and say, we've looked at this in one fashion, and we determined that it's not viable to reuse in any fashion. We don't have any basis for verifying that based on what you've submitted.
And other adaptive reuses as well, if it's cast in place, could you add additional stories to it? Lofts are prevalent in any redevelopment of historic districts all over the country, and just to say, we got to take it down because it doesn't meet your current model, I can appreciate. But what other attempts have we to do a win-win?
Right.
Yeah, adaptive reuse. I think that's
some adaptive reuse of these structures,
And that's
particularly that one.
And that's a big item in the the master plan too.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
they call out that building specifically as something that if it can be used for adaptive reuse, it should be.
And that was one of the comments I wanted to make, and it's very appreciative that you have an interest in that property, by all means, but those buildings are between 1855 and 1872. So they're very historical. And unfortunately, so many of the Geneva historical buildings have been demolished due to advanced state of disrepair by the current or previous owners. So our goal is hoping we can work together, because part of the plan is that you want to balance the historic charm, which is what Geneva is known for, with also the present-day market demand that is currently at stake here. So I think there needs to be a more give and take as far as, because the building that you have proposed, the buildings that you have proposed, it's demolishing all these historical sites. And what you're offering does not even come close to being something that would be welcoming in a historic district.
And the fact that TIF funds are potentially available too, leads me to believe that, and I know those funds, whatever they may end up being, can be used for preservation.
I don't think that's part of the district though, is it though?
It is,
It
they
is.
are
It
available for
is.
TIF funds, and it could be used for preservation as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what, I think that part of the master plan is to adaptively reuse buildings as we can, and I don't see where this plan has even looked at that and tried to look at that. It just seems like, well, and I understand, I'm an architect, so it's easier to deal with things that are a blank slate, so, but does that, I guess as a commission, do we have, I mean, there are 7 buildings on this site that are proposed to be demolished. Is does that give everyone pause for this?
Yes.
Yeah, I think some of them
Yes,
could be
yeah.
demolished and others should be looked at for,
Renovation.
Renovation,
and
reuse, right.
adaptive reuse. And I wonder if, I mean, I think that I look at the ones along First Street as ones that could be adaptively reused.
Yes.
Because I know that there are examples of that type of thing, house being renovated in the historic district. And it would keep the scale of it the way it is.
Well,
And that's part of what we're mandated to do, is to,
And I don't like, I'm an architect too, and I don't know what your business model is, but one thing that gave me pause is when we talked about moving those buildings, the site sizes are irregular. Has any thought been given to consolidate those particular structures in one parcel or two?
Exactly.
Subdivided to what would be a small lot size in Geneva, and use the remainder of the land to integrate. I see a bunch of possibilities, and maybe you looked at all this stuff already.
if you could state your name if you're gonna.
Yes, my name is Ben Pecoraro. I'm Anthony's dad. I appreciate what you guys are trying to do, but it doesn't work for us.
Okay.
If you're trying to save the homes, why don't we just put them up for sale for $1? Maybe somebody will buy them and they'll want to move.
That's not our, we're not here to do that. We're trying to save district, and
No,
part
I
of our
understand, but
mandate is.
Were you involved when this was projected to do this kind of development for this site?
But this development for this site, I mean, I think that development for that site was, I don't know, we were not involved with it. None
Yeah,
of
well,
us in
This
this,
is the Historic
on
Preservation
this,
Commission.
were involved with it. There were other people on the Historic District that were involved with that Historic Preservation Commission. That was, how many years ago? 11 years ago. So, and right within that master plan, it says that we're looking to wherever possible, adaptively reuse existing buildings that are on the sites. So, I mean,
I think you should have been more involved with that, and if you didn't want this kind of development, it shouldn't have leaded to get this far, because we're following the guidelines of what is permitted there. You know, granted the fact that we're 3 feet taller, I mean, if we really.
well, I guess we're seeing your proposal, I mean, it's difficult for us because part of our mandate is to safeguard the historic district. And that's, part of that is reusing and adaptive reusing and looking at buildings that can be saved. So that,
And when we looked at this development, it didn't say that these buildings have to be saved.
it may not have
Because if it
said,
did
but
say that, we wouldn't have, gone this far with it.
Oh,
Well, I guess, from my perspective, we're not saying these buildings, all these homes have to be saved. What, in my opinion, I think we need more information about why they can't be saved. I think the idea of, can one or two of them be saved and repurposed and consolidated maybe in one corner of the block, and then the rest of that block on First Street, maybe have a fewer townhomes, so that the facade there on First Street is somewhat consistent and sensitive to the rest of the homes that are south of Block 18. So it fits in more in the historical district, instead of having a solid wall of
Would it make a
townhomes.
difference? Would it make a difference if the one home, let's say that the best home out of those, are they 4 or 5?
4.
There's 4.
Yeah.
The best home is the white one in the middle.
That's the best one?
That's the most historically
Historical
significant one.
significant.
That's
Well,
the one that has the most architectural
And
integrity.
architecturally, too.
Yeah.
which was the one that was turned.
That was the William
was
Berman's house. It was built in
Architecturally, that's
1855.
probably
So,
a little
it's kinda
bit,
hard-
but, it's just, that's what we're, I'll
That's
speak
what our
for
recommendation
myself,
might
right.
be. That's what I'm
I'd
saying.
like to see all those possibilities. I mean, again, I know it doesn't meet your current business model of developing a whole new site, but the responsibility, as everybody's saying, I believe, is to see if we could accomplish some kind of win-win here, which has some respect for some of the, and maybe you're right, it's not all of them.
Right.
But whether it's doing lofts with the big warehouse or what, that there's some nod to the past and some attempt at preserving something. I'd like to see a little bit more than, 4 or 5 line items that's saying, this is our square foot cost model, it's not financially feasible to do it.
Well, I mean, then you vote the way you like to vote.
Sure.
Because it doesn't.
Well, we're making recommendations.
No, I-
We're not,
Yes, I understand. So, vote, the way you feel is right.
well,
and,
yeah, we're not
So-
really voting anyway, we're just making
Well,
a
you're
recommendation.
Yes,
What
you're
we tend to
recommending
do
body.
is
Yes, I
make
get it.
recommendations to you based on the commission's priorities and objectives, so that you can do, some of this research and maybe modify the design a little bit so that it does pass and that we don't have to vote against it, so that we can do something.
Well,
that's-
actually, I think the process here is, it
Different.
goes from us to the zoning and planning board. And maybe you could lay that out one more time, Mike, David.
So in this process, the commission will be making recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Commission. They will conduct the public hearing, consider your recommendations, the minutes from this meeting, and forward their recommendation to the city council, who will consider the recommendations of both the Historic Preservation Commission and the Planning and Zoning Commission.
But it will not come back to us after it's been approved by the city council as a PUD?
If they secure all their entitlements and financing at the city council level, demolition of individual properties or construction of the project would not come back to the HOAC.
Okay.
So based on our recommendations, that will go to the planning and zoning. When would they have the opportunity to modify their proposal?
I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think it would be in their interest to do that prior to the public hearing,
Okay.
to show that they've made a good faith effort to accommodate your recommendations.
So we would have recommendations, and then planning and zoning would have their own recommendations?
Correct.
And at that point, after receiving those, or having knowledge of those, you could choose to make revisions if you deemed that you wanted to do that? That's
Right.
correct? And before the public hearing?
Right. So, this is a little atypical for the Historic Preservation Commission. In this instance, you're a recommending body.
Okay.
So my question to you, gentlemen, is when you were putting together this plan for the townhouses and the apartment, did you have access to the downtown station area master plan?
To the comprehensive master
Yes.
plan? Yes.
So you were able to review that?
The comprehensive plan?
Yes.
Correct.
Because clearly in that plan, it states all the things that we're talking about, that new development should be compatible with and respectful of the Geneva brand that embraces its collective local history. So even throughout that plan, it constantly repeats that it needs to really work together with the historic district. And it doesn't look like any of that is in this plan.
And we appreciate the opinion, and we'll listen to your recommendations as well, and to make and adjust wherever we possibly can, really.
And we
based on your
appreciate you taking
Yeah.
interest in
Yeah.
that parcel
Yeah.
of property, we really do.
Yeah.
But we also have to be held accountable to what our requirements are as the Historical Preservation Commission for
We
the
understand.
city.
Sure. We understand.
If we were just to say, okay, yeah, there's nothing you can do with the bottling plant, just based on what we have before us, that's really not enough for us to make that determination. There's only been one use, or, basically, there's no, adaptive reuse being considered, or has been considered, that we're aware of, that we've been given information on. So, that's one of the things that I would recommend that you do. You relook at that and see if there is some way, if you have to redesign some portions of your building, if you can, to adaptively reuse that in some way, that's great. If you look at a couple of things, along that vein, and you still decide that it's just impossible to do anything with that, that needs to be documented and presented. Because then there's a basis for, making or deciding that, yes, we agree that that building can be demolished.
And I think that comes with the same thoughts of our recommendations of at least salvaging some of the housing along First Street there by either consolidating lots or something to that effect, just to keep the scale down in that area.
Now, can I make an offer or an idea? I mean, his idea of selling some of those single-family homes as is for somebody else to relocate is something that we have explored in the past. It gives an opportunity for somebody else who does have maybe more value in the property than we do to use it and refurbish it on another site. That's an idea that we've tossed around, and I think it is something that could be a middle ground. We've also obviously, well, not obviously, but we are playing with the idea of reusing all of the brick from the 302 Bottling Works facility. I think that might be something that could be feasible and I think attractive, and possibly trying to design around that and try to keep the design of the building more in compliance with what is already there. I mean, it's something that we could make adjustments on.
Just
I get
keep
it.
in mind that, we're not interested in having, monuments or, museums
I
or
see
that
that.
kind of thing, So,
Well, I see
We
that
would
in,
prefer to adaptively reuse the building.
The structure
as-
itself, and
as
leave
it-
the
as it
structure,
stands, yeah.
that's kind of what our mandate is, when we can, and, you know, I've seen other projects coming before the Historic Preservation Commission and said that there's no way we could adaptively reuse this building, and they turned around and they found a way to work it. And that's kind of what I think I think I can say that that's what the commission would, and that's the same with the housing along First Street there. Is there a way we can salvage it? I think a minimal thing would be to have it, sell it for $1 to be moved somewhere else. I think that's fine, but it's not, I don't think that's, I'd rather have it on the site that it started on.
That's right.
Even if it's relocated, because I found that there are so many relocated houses within Geneva.
Yeah, in Geneva.
In Geneva,
Big
so,
lots, and they've moved it one side or the other, and I don't know, when you have a whole block to work with, not knowing all your parameters, it seems like there's a lot of untapped potential here for some kind of win-win and a nod to our historic heritage.
You know, those homes on First Street, like the Berman House, the white one, that's 305. The architectural significance and integrity of that remains the front part of that. There's been additions in the back, and maybe those additions are, you know,
substandard or.
substandard, not really something. But there's been many places in Geneva where a house that small, just like that, they tear down the bad additions, they build beautiful new additions to those that go for a lot of money. And they could either be single-family homes, they could be, you know, multiple-family homes. There's some creative, you know, things that can be done potentially
You could
with one or
certainly
two of those.
recommend, you know, with options. I mean, I don't know how this goes.
Well,
Yeah,
Because
Chairman,
you're a
what do we do
recommending
for a
body, right?
recommendation?
Or-
I think what we need to do is just state succinctly what we would think would be, what we feel is more appropriate than what's been presented, I guess.
So,
Or-
just one of those things, so the adaptive reuse of that bottling
Bottling pad.
facility. And doing that could also break up some of the mass of that big structure.
Exactly.
Because it's not just its height, it's massive, it's covering a lot of land. It just doesn't even seem like it's in keeping with the district and things like that. So if we could retain some of the original elements, right? I think that's one,
I
we
think
would
what
like to see an adaptive reuse
is
on there
of
somehow.
something on the
Yeah.
site. I mean, it really, I mean, I think we're sensitive to some of them, not everything can be saved,
Right,
so.
right. I mean, some of those structures are.
Right, like the
falling down.
ones on Stevens Street.
Yeah.
8 Stevens and the Hillquest Building. I mean, I
Yeah.
would be okay, basically. If I
Yeah.
had to vote, you know, tonight to demolish those, I would say yes, go ahead and do that.
Probably touch them and they'd fall down. I mean,
I think they're there for, but,
So it's not like we're asking for every building on the block to be either adaptively reused or preserved in any way. There's some give and take here that I think is possible.
representation of some of
All right.
the residences, that a very solid structure that's, you know, the former bottling facility. I think that, just a representation on site where it's sitting of that type of home, or, you know, just something to let us see a nod of the history within the historic district. I mean, this is our priority, is to make sure that we retain as much as we possibly can. And certainly, in front of this commission, the idea of taking out a whole block's worth of historic structures probably isn't something that we would ever be in support of.
okay, and I appreciate that. Again, we were following a lot of guidelines, maybe not every single guideline in the comprehensive plan, but we did get a lot of guidance from that, and that's how we came to our plan.
Okay? Yeah, and we're here to give you some Historic Preservation Commission recommendations, and
Yeah.
we're just kind of making a list.
yeah.
Do we do a group recommendation?
I
or
think we
individual?
do a group recommendation in that I think that what I'm getting is the consensus is we'd like, Historic Preservation would like some adaptive reuse, and we'd like to look at, we would prefer that some of the, at least a few of the houses, if they need to be relocated, they can be, but stay on the block itself.
Yeah.
And I think
And they
that's.
can be they could be consolidated.
Consolidated, but I don't think we're not looking for everything to be adaptively reused, and we're not looking for everything to be,
Preserved, right, but I'd
Yeah.
like to save as many residents, single-family as possible.
as possible. And that, I think that's the
Yeah.
commission's recommendation. Would you agree?
No,
Yes.
No, you think, well, I think on top of that, we would want to see, the scale of the
Yes, I was
townhomes
just
go
gonna add that
down,
too.
so that, and that's the
Or the apartments.
I'm thinking the townhomes and
townhome.
the apartments.
Okay.
Because I know that we've had many discussions of townhomes that we've had that are a full 2 stories, and, you know, if we can pull the eave down on that, I think that's a recommendation we would have too.
I would also say that the proposal should meet our stated setbacks, lot coverage, and building heights that other residents in Geneva have to adhere to.
Yeah. So I guess that's our recommendation.
I have a question for David. The setbacks, is that something that planning and zoning looks at and would be within their purview as far as recommendations? And-
Absolutely, they'll be looking at the requested deviations from the zoning district and making recommendations on those.
But to maintain the scale of the historic district as a whole, there has to be some consistency in setbacks. You can't say 1 or 2 blocks is exempt from this, which is to George's point initially. We've got to be consistent with
Correct.
this, and I would agree with him 100%. I would be totally against any modification of those parameters.
And I'd just like to make one comment, that in agreement with Jewel, basically, that I appreciate you guys having interest in this block and coming forward with a design, and,
Thank
you
you.
know, I do hope that
And I'd
something.
love to see something.
Yeah.
No doubt
Yeah.
about it.
We would.
Yeah,
And this
and
is your first project in Geneva, right?
This is in Geneva, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
so, you know, we try to take care of our historic, brand here, so.
No, thank
Particularly
you.
in the
Yes.
district.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions for us?
No, I don't have any other questions. I mean, I appreciate you guys appreciating us proposing something on this. We do see that, we feel that we are providing some value to the neighborhood as well, while we may have different opinions on how, but we are providing another avenue, another housing type to the community as well that we feel that there's a strong need for, which is luxury multifamily rental properties. So there is a lack of it in the area, and we feel that we are providing something that could help. But that's-
I'll bring up one other thing.
I
that
was gonna
probably-
bring it up.
Go ahead.
No,
No, go
you
ahead.
go ahead.
that's it.
Geneva is in great need and has expressed a desire for some portions of developments to provide affordable housing. And I don't know if that's been any part of your consideration. I know these are luxury units that you're looking at, but I also would recommend that you try to fit that in somewhere. If just look at how you might be able to fit that in to satisfy that need in Geneva too.
Sure, we'll evaluate that, and we have, yes. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's it from the commission, though, but thank you for coming in, I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
We really
thank you.
appreciate it, thank you. With that, I have the secretary's report, staff updates. Michael?
Hang on 1 second, got a lot of paper here. So my staff update. The staff updates are that I'm continuing to work on the survey update And I'm in an attempt to keep you updated on what permits I'm reviewing on behalf of the commission. Since our November 21st, 2023 meeting, I've looked at 11 permits, so not a lot of activity over this winter. There were 4 window permits granted for non-contributing properties, 2 roof replacements with asphalt for asphalt, 2 sign applications for commercial properties, and then 3 or 4 site paving or site repair projects. So nothing of large scale happening over this winter. That's what's been approved on behalf of the commission administratively. Are there any questions for?
I have a question. Has the new window form cost evaluation been, new window form cost evaluation been used by anyone yet? And if so, how's it worked out?
We have shared it with a couple of people who have expressed interest in looking at window replacement or window restoration projects. They have not returned a completed application at this point.
Okay.
Okay, with that, any new business from the commission? If not, I will open it up to the public. I will recognize people and they can proceed to the podium, state your name for the record, and provide your public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make a public comment at this time? If you could come up and state your name.
Good evening. My name is Ken Celic, C-E-L-I-C. I reside within a half a block of the proposal. First of all, I want to state I am not in opposition to having Block 18 developed with some sort of multifamily housing. I think that part of that would be certainly be appropriate. But this proposal brings to mind Big Yellow Taxi, the Joni Mitchell song, Pave Paradise and put up a parking lot. This isn't exactly a parking lot, but the whole idea of bulldozing everything on an entire block in the historic district seems just crazy to me. The variances that they're asking for, especially on the lot coverage, it's an 18.6% variance, not the 13% that they have in their proposal, because it's, although it's 13 percentage points, it's an 18.6% variance going from 70% coverage on the lot to 83%. And so where is the provision for water, drainage, and collection that we see on most typical new developments? In the proposal, they say that the difference in height between the townhouses that they're proposing and the apartment building is only minimally taller, but yet no figures were actually mentioned. And when I take a look at the drawings that they had in their proposal, it looks significantly more than just minimally taller. I think these structures is just way too big. If you take a look on Google Earth and Google Maps from above, this looks like it is the largest footprint building in the entire historic district, maybe the tallest, excluding the Kane County Courthouse. So those are my comments. Thank you all very much.
Come forward and state your name.
Good evening, Mary Ann Swaim, S-W-A-I-M. I have a question, because it's density. I live in the same building with Ken and Sharon. I don't know who makes the decision that this is rental versus, let's say, condo ownership or housing ownership. I just think it's the density that this would bring in is out of character with the rest of the surrounding community. And the traffic that it would bring in on the river, which is our big amenity. And I would also, someone brought up low affordable housing or low, income housing. Again, I think Geneva needs to be mindful that the river is one of our biggest assets and it should be developed correctly, and that's what you're all striving to do, and I commend that greatly. And probably the nicer the building stuff, it could still be economical for the developer, but people do pay up for nice properties. So obviously, several of us that live in the neighborhood would like it to be less dense and to be very lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, everyone. Anthony, my name is Anthony Ritrovato, Ritrovato, and I'm here with my wife, Linda, and a few of our neighbors, and we live in the townhomes that are kitty corner across from the proposed Block 18 renovation. And I believe it's Block 2. It's just outside of the historic district. And I think my first comment, and which one of my neighbors also said, concerns density, and that 7 years ago, we moved into that 1 square block, kitty corner from this development, and we built 30 townhomes in the same space that right now the proposal is to build a large building with 114 families in it. So the density is almost 4 times more, well, it is 4 times more when you include the townhomes that they propose to build on First Street. So in my opinion, the density for that 1 block of all the families living there just exceeds the reason why the commission is here, and that is to determine whether or not this project fits within the scale and character of the neighborhood. And in no way is a 114 unit rental building, in no way does that fit within the scale and character of this neighborhood. And finally, also, my neighbor just mentioned about the accessibility, and that is, unless you have a kayak, the only way you can approach this property is from the south on River or from the west on Hamilton, Ford, Peyton, or Stevens. You cannot approach the property from the east. You cannot approach the property from the north. So I'm not quite sure how the accessibility to the property, I don't know what would be done in terms of the accessibility and how that affects the residents that live within those blocks immediately around it. So we appreciate the fact that the Pecoraro family wants to do something to better our community, and we appreciate the fact that they're focusing on this block. 'Cause my wife and I walked past this block. We've walked past it for years, hoping that something can be done there to improve it. But I think it goes back to what the commission is here to determine, and that is whether or not 128 rental units on 1 square city block falls within the scale and character of the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else from the public? If there's no one, I got one more.
My name's Daniel Horvath. I live right up the hill, and I just wanted to, I lived here for, it'll be 30 years next year. So I was here for the River Lane development, worked on the River Park, our friends in the condos, and just a little, I'm not going to spend a lot of time, hopefully, but the River Lane condo development began roughly twice the size of what it is. And I think the developer made out okay. And we have a beautiful park, and we have river views, and we have relatively low density. Since that time, we've had what we call the Greystones go in to the north of Block 18. Tony and Linda's in the condos, or the townhomes over there. And the verticality and the density and the views are being taken away. And as we said while we were trying to put some sense into the condos, we love our neighbors. We've said that at those meetings. It's not about the people. We love our neighbors. But it's about density and verticality and setbacks. And there's a way to work around that. And we weren't able to do that so much with the condos. We did it really well with the River Lane development. And so there's a way forward. And we in the historic district, who again, another point made back then, we live here. And we love it here. And that's why Geneva is what it is. And when everything gets filled in around us, it's extreme. So hopefully we find common ground. Been called opponent over and over again over these 30 years. We're not opponents. It's a give and take. And again, as already mentioned too, we would love to see something happen on that block with all of the comments made here. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other public comments? If not, can I get a motion to adjourn? And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? We're out.